From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Kim Strassel here with Kate and Monet. Joe Biden sat down this weekend with some young liberal activists who asked him a question about his student loan forgiveness. Let's listen to the president describe his program.
I've just signed a law that's being challenged by my Republican colleagues, who are the same people who got PPP loans for up to close to, in some cases, up to $500,000-$600,000. They have no problem with that. The individuals in Congress got those. But what we've provided for is, if you went to school, if you qualify for a Pell Grant, you qualify for you qualify for $20,000 in debt forgiveness. Secondly, if you don't have one of those loans, you just get $10,000 written off. It's passed. I got it passed by a vote or two, and it's in effect. And already a total of, I think it's now 13 million people have applied for that service.
Okay, Kate, here's the problem. He didn't pass the bill. Biden unilaterally declared student loans forgiven. He waved his wand, that was that. And it's exactly why there are lawsuits, because he didn't go to Congress, where he's arguably supposed to go if he wants to spend some $500 billion on loan forgiveness. Now, the White House is doing its usual cleanup here, saying, the president was talking about his Inflation Reduction Act, the legislation that passed narrowly at the end of the summer. If you listen carefully, that's awfully hard to pull out of that. This is a little disturbing. This seems to be the president misremembering the very recent past. And I don't want to dwell on that so much as to use it to kind of launch to the problem that Joe Biden is proving for his party this midterm. Now, in fairness, presidents often aren't a great help to their parties in midterms. But I think one question here is whether or not Biden is uniquely problematic, given questions not just about his agenda, but about his age and his performance. We had a very interesting story recently in Time about just how much time the president is spending in Delaware. Kate, it seems that he is proving a unique drag on the party and that nobody really wants him out there with him.
Yeah, Kim, I mean, look, everyone misspeaks sometimes, but we have here a pattern of having this problem and struggling to have kind of a basic command of the facts. And like you said, the White House will come in and mop it up and say he was making this sophisticated claim about how he passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which created money for this other thing. I mean, it does not check out when you just listen to the tape and try to digest what he's saying. So I think what we're seeing here is that there is a risk aversion to putting him out on the campaign trail where he might say something that makes matters worse. To your point, a president with a 40% approval rating is always going to be something of a mixed bag on the campaign trail for his party in a midterm election. So I think some of that is normal, but here we're seeing more risk aversion than usual. For instance, Dr. Jill Biden, his wife, is in very high demand on the campaign trail. She is going from Georgia to Florida and really taking a lot of time on the trail. And so she is in demand. There's no concern about her. I think some of these things are really unique to Biden. And also note, Kim, when we see him on the campaign trail, he's doing these very staged events here. I would like to be on his detail because he seems to get a lot of ice cream going to Baskin Robbins in Oregon, for instance, and talking about the governor's race there. So I do think we're seeing this really risk averse, this really orchestrated approach here that suggests he does have unique liabilities that are more than just what you'd expect from a midterm president.
Yeah, Monet, it isn't as if he's not going out at all. He is going to some particular states. Kate mentioned he was in Oregon and California. Notably, those are states where he won the presidential election by a mile. He hasn't done any big rallies, though. These have been very low-key events. One that caught my eye, he went to Colorado on that recent swing, and he did appear next to Senator Michael Bennet, who is up for re-election and is facing a little bit of competition from a Republican candidate there. But it was not a political event. Instead, Bennett appeared next to him as Biden dedicated a national monument in Camp Hale. So there does seem to be some kind of strategy here. But what is it exactly?
Well, I do think that it's an interesting question. If you're a Democratic candidate, sort of how do we utilize President Biden? Do we want his support? Do we think he's someone who's going to help us get over the finish line? Because President Biden, as you've mentioned, mentioned, is deeply unpopular in this country today. I believe his approval rating usually is around 40%. Maybe it's wavered, tends to track with the economy. But generally, there are more Americans who have an unfavorable view of him than a favorable one. But traditionally, sort of a president, even if they are not popular among, obviously, voters of the opposite side of the aisle and moderate ones, still does have some amount of purchase with voters in their own party. And so in the more kind of reliably blue states like Oregon, like Colorado, that do have close contests, it does make sense that you'd have candidates who are willing to invite Biden out, because there probably are quite a lot of Democrats in those states who still do like him a lot and who, could be encouraged to turn out by Biden appearing in that state. And so I think we're very unlikely to see Biden appearing in places like Pennsylvania and Ohio, where there's a kind of broad middle, which is a little bit more conservative leaning and where he isn't quite as popular. Whereas in some of these other more reliably blue states, I think it is possible that Biden could be an engine for turnout among Democrats, even if he isn't well regarded by the moderate voters that the parties are vying for.
Yeah, it's a very good point. There's a delicate balance there. You want to get your base out. Everyone seems to understand this election will very much be about turnout, but you don't want to galvanize the other side by connecting an unpopular president with a candidate that's in a real squeaker of a race. One thing he is very good at, and we should point this out, is this president can still turn a dollar. The DNC announced that it had raised $214 million as of August, and a lot of that was with Biden headlining events. He has been doing a lot of fundraising. I guess he can also serve as cheerleader in chief. He's been giving a lot of pep talks to his party to hold the course. Just last Friday in the White House, I saw him say, it's been back and forth with them, ahead, us, ahead, them, ahead, back and forth, and the polls have been all over the place. I think that we're going to see one more shift back to our side in the closing days. Maybe, we don't know. But Kate, here's an interesting question, and I'll give you the last word here. We've seen presidents take this approach before. In 2006, George W. Bush, he was suffering over the Iraq War. He largely abandoned the campaign trail. In 2010, Obama, there had been a huge public backlash over Obamacare. He largely stayed at the White House. They took this traditional approach of better safe than sorry at the advice of campaign aides. But I'd note it didn't work. In 2006, Democrats won control of both houses of Congress. In 2010, the GOP made some of the largest midterm gains since before World War II. Kate, is it conventional wisdom wrong? Maybe he should just be out there. Or is the idea here that even if Democrats lose, if the president had been out there, been more prominent, it might have been even worse? We'll let you have some final thoughts here.
Well, it's impossible to know, but Kim, if he were out there with a message that he was paying attention to some of these problems we've been discussing, think about how many times they've basically repackaged Build Back Better, a huge spending package, and tried to sell it in different ways. It failed in Congress, so it should have been a message to them that that was not going to work, and that they needed to come up with some ideas that were more attuned to what Americans were experiencing. But that has not happened. The Biden administration has not changed their priorities or their tack. So I don't see it being productive to be out there making it worse at this point. I do think that Biden did have an opportunity to learn from that failure in Congress and change his priorities in his first few years of his presidency, but I do not think we've seen him do that. And so I now think Democrats are where they are, and they thought they might have gotten a lifeline with Roe v. Wade being overturned and that they could just hammer that all the way through November, but that seems to have come up dry too. So I think those are the reasons why we can expect Republicans to overperform what we might have expected a few months ago.
Excellent point, that it may not be the man, it may be the lack of message. And here's the fun news. In 2 weeks, we're going to find out. So thank you, Kate. Thank you, Monet. Thanks to our listeners. A reminder that we are here every weekday. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. And if you like the show, please hit that subscribe button.